Hello there. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Welcome into this Monday edition of First Take. We appreciate you hanging with us. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith.
What's up, big boy?
How you doing?
How we doing, guys? You have a good weekend? Finally get a little sleep and stuff?
Yes. You know what? I must admit, listen, had some beautiful time with the family.
Nice.
In between. To start off the weekend, I got to watch Friday's episode of General Hospital. That was always a good thing. Okay, my episode there, my appearance, they come this Thursday.
This Thursday? Can't wait. Max, you get to break it down.
And then I closed my weekend by watching my favorite primetime show right now, Power on Stars.
How good was last night's episode?
Amari Hardwick, 50 Cent, Joseph Sikora. I'm proud of you. Oh, what a show.
We won't spoil it for people, but it was an incredible episode last night. All right, well, we're going to try to have a show today, right?
Well, we do.
Let's get into it. We'll get you caught up on what went down over the weekend. And we begin with Saturday. We finally saw football back in L.A. when the Rams hosted the Cowboys. It was Tony Romo's backup, Dak Prescott, who stole the show at the Coliseum, going 10-12 for 139 yards and 2 TDs in one half in front of nearly 90,000 fans. You know the boss was happy about that maiden voyage. TMZ caught up with Jerry Jones after the game. Take a listen.
What is it about Johnny Manziel that you guys don't want him on the team?
Dak Prescott.
Stephen A., you were tough on Jerry Jones following his comments about his backup QB situation. Do you owe Mr. Jones an apology after Dak's performance?
Well, congratulations, not just to you, not just to Max, but to all the producers here at First Take and for anybody at ESPN for thinking like evidently you all do, because I want to make sure that I'm clear by saying that is the most ridiculous question that I've ever been asked in my career at ESPN on First Take. Do I owe Jerry Jones an apology because of one preseason game? Am I supposed to get excited? Let's stop the presses. Let's throw a parade. Let's sit up there and celebrate. Let's sing Kumbaya to all the Dallas Cowboy fans out there. God bless you. You've got a backup quarterback because of one preseason game against a second unit St. Louis team, against a St. Louis team that has a lot to prove itself, because last time I checked, they haven't been in the playoffs in recent memory. It's not like they went out there and went against the first unit of the reigning defending Super Bowl champions and wreaked havoc. I didn't see that. I saw a Dak Prescott that completed 10 of 12 passes for 139 yards. Several of those passes were dip and dunks as far as I'm concerned. He had a couple, 2 to 3 good throws. He's got nice size, nice presence in the pocket. He can throw the football, nice poise. I like it. It also helped that he had Dez Bryant out there. Let's not forget that Dez Bryant is a stud. Let's not forget that Dez Bryant is one of the elite receivers in the game. Let's not forget that Dez Bryant had a foot injury last year, and because of that, just as much as Tony Romo was what crippled and decimated the Dallas Cowboys season, that Dez Bryant was out on the field the other night, okay, against subpar individuals. I don't give a damn whether it was a starting unit, the second unit. It's the St. Louis Rams, not a Los Angeles Rams, okay? So we understand their front seven is big time. We understand what their defense can be, but until it is actually proven that it reaches fruition, we're not going to throw a parade for them either. It's a nice atmosphere. Fans in Los Angeles showed out. Came up, supported the team. We all know that people in La La have a lot to do. They didn't have to be at that damn game. They could have been at Venice Beach. They could have been over in Pacific Palisades. They could have been at downtown L.A. Live. They could have been on Rodeo Drive. They could have been at the Beverly Wilshire. They could have been several places. But they showed up to watch the Los Angeles Rams play a game, an NFL game in Los Angeles for the first time in over 20 years. So they deserve a lot of credit for that. Fans were hyped. Dallas, with Prescott up in there early, showed out. I like it. But it's one preseason game. The very first preseason game. He's an anomaly. He's somebody that you got to figure him out. Let's see what happens. The most exciting thing to say about this is this. You clearly don't need Johnny Manziel, which Jerry Jones knew, which is why he didn't draft him. Okay? Secondly, and more importantly, the Dallas Cowboys just might finally have a viable, reliable fixture as a backup quarterback, because Lord knows you'll need it for when, not if, but when Tony Romo gets hurt. That's about all. Outside of that, all you Cowboy lovers out there, this is not the latest excuse to be delusional. This is not the latest excuse to jump on your high horse and act like we should all make our reservations for the Super Bowl. No. He's a rookie. out of Mississippi State, drafted in the 4th round, which means that 3 rounds went without him. Anybody feeling the need to pick him? I like Dak Prescott. I think he's got a lot of promise, but there's always the threat that he could be contaminated by being a Dallas Cowboy. It remains to be seen.
If they had to redo that draft, just based on this performance alone, I'll bet you he moves up a couple slots. I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame yet. It's one preseason game, and Dallas Cowboys fans do need to calm down and know you don't owe anyone an apology for criticizing the Cowboys. However, they have reason to be optimistic after that performance. They have reason. First of all, he really should have been perfect. He should have been 12 for 12. He had 2 passes that were dropped, one in particular that really should have been caught, but both were more or less on target. He showed what Trent Dilfer calls arm talent. It's not just that he's making all the throws, he's throwing catchable balls. No, he never really had to air it out. We didn't get to see that. But even his down-the-field passes, when he did have to throw them, were accurate. They were on receivers' steps. He threw them in a position where the offensive player, his target, could make a play on the ball. And if your argument is, Stephen A., that Dak Prescott's out there behind a first-rate offensive line throwing to Dez Bryant, who's going to be making those plays against subpar defenses at this point in the preseason and second units, et cetera, I'll say Dez makes plays on par defenses, on under par defenses. Dez makes plays on all kinds of defenses. And that offensive line and that receiver is who, I agree, it's when, not if Dak gets in the games. It's when and not if Tony Romo goes down with injury. I'm not wishing it on him, but if you look at his recent past, this is what happens. That back is a chronic problem. When Dak gets in, he's going to be playing behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And he's going to be throwing to one of the best receivers. I mean, that's how it is. So even if you think they elevated him from good to excellent in the preseason, the fact that it was his first preseason game and that's how he comes out of the gate, is he supposed to get worse from that? I would anticipate improvement. If I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan right now, if I'm Jerry Jones right now, who, by the way, wanted to draft Johnny Manziel, it was Stephen Jones who insisted that they go with an offensive lineman.
That is correct.
If I'm the Cowboys right now, I think. Listen, you don't know yet, but I'm thinking that they found something here in the 4th round of this draft. They found a backup quarterback.
But let's be clear. They did find something in the 4th round. Now, you could make the argument that Brady went a little bit later in his career, and look what he turned out to be. Fair enough. The reality is clear, though. Right now, this is Tony Romo's team. He had on the headset. He's given a lot of praise because he's the tutor extraordinaire. He's educating him, and the kid showers, and he's being that veteran presence, and he's really doing everything that he can to be a leader. Tony Romo's a very, very nice guy. I mean, I make fun of the Dallas Cowboys because we all know I hate the Cowboys. But Tony Romo is a very nice guy, a good dude, and I'm quite sure he's putting forth his due diligence to do everything he can to make sure that these guys are as prepared as they possibly can be. I like Dak Prescott when he was in college. I'm going to like him on the pro level. I have no doubt in my mind that he's somebody that's going to make this team, and I think that he's going to end up being pretty damn good. He may very well be the heir apparent. So that definitely is a reason to get excited. All I'm trying to say is that we need to understand why the excitement exists. The excitement exists, A, because he's a 4th rounder, B, because he's backing up Tony Romo, C, because the Dallas Cowboys have a history of not having a backup quarterback, and D, and most importantly, because we're always looking for something legitimate, something concrete outside of headlines to celebrate about the Dallas Cowboys, because they give you very little reason to celebrate them. A matter of fact, I don't even like the fact that we're talking about Dak Prescott right now, because the more I talk about him, the more concerned I get. I don't wish harm on anybody. I don't want him hurt. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. But the Dallas Cowboys are the walking epitome of a black cat walking around anything. Wherever they are, bad things tend to happen eventually. Not always immediate, but always eventually. It's who they are. And so the more we find ourselves talking about this Dak Prescott, who's got an arm, who's got pocket presence, who has poise, who has mobility, and every reason there is to think that he's an upgrade compared to the Brandon Whedons of the world and others, clearly what the issue here and the reason why we should be concerned is that he's a Dallas Cowboy.
Well, we agree.
We don't wish anything upon him.
I think all three of us can agree on that. But one other thing that Dak Prescott showed in that game was game management ability, which is, it sounds like you're always insulting someone when you say that, but that's a huge, you need to have that ability.
It.
First of all, they were heavily penalized at a point. Second and very long, third and long. He
doesn't even know the playbook yet.
He threw them instead of panicking, he got them into field goal position. They converted on the field goal.
Pump the brakes.
I will say this also. Last preseason, remember how good Bradford and the Eagles looked in the preseason? Eagles fans were flying high, so to speak. Oh, look at how good everyone, and then it didn't turn out that way in the regular season. So they do have to pump the brakes in terms of enthusiasm in the preseason. But any team that saw this from their fourth-round pick at quarterback, who needs a backup quarterback, is going to be very happy about it.
Leave this alone and move on to this next subject. I'm getting sick and tired of your butts. You got a whole lot of butts up in there.
Some howevers?
Just sit up there and say, yo, Stephen A., I agree with you. Just get it over with.
Some howevers?
We all know.
He does it. But you know what's the positive? We're talking about the Cowboys.
We all know.
We're talking about the Cowboys, and we're talking football. As far as when Dak will start, we'll get into that later. And also on the other side of things, the Rams. I have some news on those L.A. Rams that I think is going to make this man hot. We'll get into that a little later.
I don't agree with him about the next topic, that's for sure.
All right. A couple hours before kickoff on Saturday, Colts owner Jim Irsay took to Twitter to let fans know that Andrew Luck would not play against the Bills. So Colts fans, he said, it's a long preseason and 2 home games are coming in the next 2 weeks. Look for number 12 to make his first start then instead of tonight. Then he tweeted, followed up here with, yes, there is some truth on this dark, rainy night that my good friend Rex has never heard of the word preseason. Now, this was alluding to Rex Ryan teams not letting up in the preseason. After the game, Ryan intimated that he did, in fact, let up on Saturday. Rex saying, quote, take a look at the tapes and see how many times we blitzed. So I can tell you one thing. Chuck Pagano is a good friend of mine, a legitimate good friend of mine. I have way more respect for him than I do others. Stephen A., Irsay versus Rex. Whose side are you on?
I'm on Irsay's side in this matter. Certainly the owner, you can make an argument about the owner speaking out or whatever, but that's Irsay, and we all know that he's a bit eccentric and clearly a bit different. Here's the reality about Rex Ryan. He's on the hot seat. We knew this, and we spoke about this coming into this weekend's games, okay? So before his team stepped out on the field against the Indianapolis Colts, Max, we specifically said, Rex Ryan is on a hot seat. You've got LaShawn McCoy. You signed Tyrod Taylor to a 6-year, $92 million extension, all right? You got Sammy Watkins. You have your offensive line secure. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's really the first time that Rex Ryan had an offense. When the Jets went to 2 straight AFC championship games in his, inaugural years with the New York Jets, he didn't have much of an offense. They had a running game, no doubt. Mark Sanchez was a rookie and then entering his second year. And as a result, you had to bring him along, and he needed to be the game manager. You rode the coattails of your defense, which we gave Rex Ryan all the credit in the world for, even though Dennis Thurman is a guy that never gets enough credit because he's been religiously your defensive coordinator. We still gave Rex all the credit. Well, how is it that we spent 6 years lauding and praising Rex Ryan for his defensive prowess and brilliance as a defensive mind in the NFL, but then he gets to Buffalo and we forget all of that. We forget to point the blame in his direction. The year before Rex Ryan arrived in Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills had 54 sacks. Last year they had 21. That is a drop of 33 in the number of sacks. We're not going to get into just the penalties and how chaotic they were and how haphazard they were. They got in their own way. We know all of this. We chronicled this. We talked about this ad nauseum. So what does Rex Ryan's crew come in game 1 of the preseason and do? 11 penalties overall, 4 offside calls, including 2 in a row to help the Colts on their first touchdown drive. How in the hell does that happen? And then Rex Ryan's going to come out here and he's going to complain about his team, talking about we got to get it together. No, Rex Ryan, with all due respect, you have to get it together. You're the head coach. You're supposed to be the brilliant dude defensively. You are the guy that's supposed to rival Bill Belichick. You refuse to kiss his ring. You didn't do it in New York. You haven't done it in Buffalo. He continues to wax you, and you have no answer for this. This is on Rex Ryan. So what I'm saying is, if you're Rex Ryan, I know, and am in no way, I'm not qualified to question his acumen or his brilliance defensively. What I am qualified to do is look at results and say, This is what they are. You tell me why that is. The man's teams have been sloppy, unproductive, all right, and get in their own way. And what we have seen already in the first preseason game is the same old under Rex Ryan now for 6 years and counting. At some point in time, somebody needs to let Rex Ryan know, we appreciate you getting on your team, but perhaps you need to look in the mirror and get on yourself before ownership for the Bills do it for you by firing you. I'm not wishing that on him because I like Rex, but he got to get it together.
Well, I'm glad you're up on your soapbox against Rex Ryan. But I believe the question was, whose side are you on, Irsay or Rex Ryan?
And I said Irsay. You didn't
Let me
hear
tell
that
you why
answer?
I'm on Rex Ryan's side.
All right, well, go ahead.
Because while everything you said is true on its surface, that's right, this is really about Irsay saying, why isn't Andrew Luck playing? Because his good friend Rex Ryan has never heard of the word preseason. In other words, he doesn't want to jeopardize his quarterback's health because an overzealous Rex Ryan may actually coach a full-contact sport to win and therefore imperil Irsay's quarterback. Hold on, time out. The level of hypocrisy for an owner to come out and say this, let's step back and think about this for a second. The NFL preseason, which should not exist, I don't know why you can't just have camps and start the regular season, actually does exist because it's a clever way, although transparent, for the owners to extract extra revenue. This is a national sport. Remember, it's mostly national TV contracts. This is the first time the NFL gets to, the only time the NFL really gets to go to local affiliates and juice them for money as though they're Major League Baseball. The NFL gets to juice the local affiliates for money, gets to make all the money, ticket sales, etc., on the games that they don't have to share with the players, essentially. The players essentially don't get paid for the preseason, but the owners do, and the TV networks do, and the sponsors do. Let's focus on the owners. You're extracting money claiming that this product is NFL football. Not regular season, but NFL football nonetheless. And then the owner, who's profiting from this, complains that the opposing coach is actually coaching to play an NFL game? Oh, no, but it's a preseason game. Wink, wink. Come on, Rex, nudge, nudge. You know what we're doing here. We're just juicing the fans for money. Now, think about, don't actually play the game. Think about the people who've been injured in recent years during preseason games, like Jordy Nelson, for example, like Carson Wentz, like Malcolm Mitchell, the Patriots wideout, whose leg bent in the wrong direction, and it looks like he's out for the year. These guys are being lost to injury in so-called meaningless games, games in which men like Irsay say, hey, don't really play football here, when they're selling us a product claiming it's football. The level of hypocrisy of Irsay here far outweighs the fact that Rex Ryan's defense should play better in Buffalo, Stephen A.
Why? Because Rex Ryan is the one that instigated matters as far as I'm concerned by pointing out how he was taking a jab. He was essentially taking a jab at Irsay and the Colts for not playing Andrew Luck. Considering the injuries that Andrew Luck had last year, the bevy of injuries, do we have to go down a list of the injuries that he suffered from last year that led him to only play about 7 or 9 games or so? Really, we have to think about that? If you're Jim Irsay, this is your franchise quarterback that you just gave over $100 million to, that was struggling because he was injured last year. You're Rex Ryan. First of all, it's a couple of things. Number one, you don't need to play your starting quarterback the very, very first game of the preseason. The Dallas Cowboys certainly didn't do that with Tony Romo yesterday. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers did that with Big Ben Roethlisberger either. So we got that point out of the way. Number two, did it ever occur to Rex Ryan that Andrew Luck ain't worth going up against? Your team ain't worth Andrew Luck going up against? I mean, what is he going to learn? What's he going to learn by going up against the Buffalo Bills? What the hell did they do last year? Why don't you show us that you're a formidable defense again? Why don't you show us, Buffalo Bills, that you're worthy of being competed against? Why don't you show us, Buffalo Bills, Rex Ryan's crew, that indeed you got enough of a crew where I might want to put my quarterback out there because you know what? Let him get some good work in. Let's see what they're going to throw at him. Even though you wouldn't do that in the first preseason game to begin with, the fact of the matter is that it may not have been required against that particular team because Rex does the same old, and maybe, just maybe, they weren't going to be formidable enough for me to waste my energy, my time. All of those things are plausible explanations as to why the Indianapolis Colts, who, by the way, needs to work more on its defense than its offense as far as I'm concerned, because their offense is going to be there fine. Their defense is horrid. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. If I'm going to protect anybody, it's going to be Andrew Luck. And even if I'm not going to protect him, literally in terms of putting him against competition, maybe I want to protect him by not wasting his energy and his time for nonsensical exercises like going up against these Buffalo Bills who seem to get in their own way more so than an opponent will. So maybe, just maybe, that's something that Irsay was thinking, and Rex Ryan didn't need to say anything.
Which one is it? Is it that the Bills defense can't do anything anyway, or is it they're going to hurt Andrew Luck?
I don't know. I have not spoken to Irsay. I have not spoken to Rex Ryan, but the bottom line is it's plausible.
I would not play Andrew Luck either in the first preseason game, and not because it's against Rex Ryan and the Bills, but because I want to protect his health. Andrew Luck, I think people don't even know it. We're in the Cam Newton, Andrew Luck era, and people don't even know it yet. I think Andrew Luck is that good. I think he's going to be elite as he was a couple of years ago.
And no, I wouldn't. I agree with you.
And no, I wouldn't risk it either. But that's because. But Irsay is not in the position to make that claim out loud, to actually say Rex Ryan doesn't know that it's the preseason. Irsay, you're selling this to us as NFL product and then turning around and in the same breath saying, but it's not really NFL product. It's just greedy owners enforcing a double standard.
Well, the Buffalo Bills are selling themselves as NFL products, and they haven't proven that as of yet. So what's your argument? How you going to sit there and dime out Irsay but not talk about Rex Ryan and the Bills?
Did you also notice, too, in the quote, he said Chuck Pagano is a good friend of mine, a legitimate good friend, left Irsay out, kind of taking a shot there. That's not his boy, that Pagano
I don't feel that way about others.
That's fine, but, you know, what you're doing is identifying that you have a personal relationship with Chuck Pagano.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
All right, and congrats to Tyrod Taylor, who signed a 6-year, $92 million
he deserves it, especially for that squad.
So he'll be with the Bills, giving them some security. When we come back, we're going to take a break from the NFL and go to the association. Team USA, what's going on in Rio? Barely surviving for the third straight game. Wait till you hear what Kevin Durant has to say. After the game, we'll share those comments. Stephen A. and Max will react in just a bit. Stay here. To another player on that Team USA, Carmelo Anthony. He put up 10 last night. You spoke to him over the weekend. Can you share that with us?
It was a rough Friday night, to say the least. After they played, Team USA played, Carmelo Anthony reached out to me from Rio, and he was not pleased at all with what I had to say. And look, I'm a native New York. I'm a diehard Knicks fan, and in most situations, I'll be damned if I apologize about anything with the Knicks. It's 1973 since the championship has come to New York City. And as far as I'm concerned, the quotes that I saw from Carmelo Anthony about a gold medal and it being satisfactory, I meant every damn word I said until he reached out and educated me about the fact that his interview was taken completely out of context. He specifically said, according to him, that, of course, I still got a few years to go. Of course, I'm pursuing an NBA championship, and I'm starving for it. If I look back on my career and I don't win a championship, and what I have to lean on is what I accomplished in college, what I accomplished in the pros, what I accomplished in Olympic competition, I'm going to look at my career as being a great career. But I have unfinished business. Trust me on that. So, in other words, what he was trying to say is that by no means did he give the impression, under any circumstances, that 2 or 3 gold medals would be satisfactory for him. And for me, of all people, to sit up there and to imply otherwise was incredibly insulting to him. Here's where he got me, Max and Molly. I'm very big on this, just so you know, in all my years of covering the NBA. One of the reasons why I don't hesitate to get on cats is because this cell phone right here and my other phone, I am accessible to every NBA player and every athlete that you can find. I'm the easiest reporter in the world to find. If you are a professional athlete and I talk about you, I always make sure, whether it's to you or it's to people in your camp or your team, that you know where to find me. I don't hide. Here's the problem. With Melo, who I've known for more than a decade, he's a guy that I communicate with often. I should have spoken to him before I went on the air because I have access to him. Because the number one question he asked me, how the hell could you go on the air and say that without calling me? You always call or text first. Why did you not do that this time? And I was like, you were in Rio. You know, you're at the Olympics. He said, you've reached me when I've been out of the country before. He got me. He's right. That's why I had to come on the air and confess to that and man up and apologize, because I felt the way that I felt, and I would still feel the same way if indeed he meant the quote the way that it was taken. But the fact of the matter is, had I reached out to him like I normally do, I would have gotten his perspective. And this time, I did not do that. That's on me. I got to apologize to that man. I was wrong.
Fine, should have reached out, but the point, I think, remains, that's still, the content of the quote is still the same. Of course, he wants to win a championship, but if he doesn't, he'd be okay with the 3 gold medals and all that? Could you imagine, if you're an ISO scorer, if that's what you do, you have that kind of mentality, could you imagine Kobe Bryant ever making a claim like that if he was this deep into his career without a championship, that one day he'd be okay with gold medals?
Well, that's what Melo
was
saying, because I had our researchers look for the articles. I don't see the articles anywhere, anything like that. I saw guys, you know, Melo was saying that's not what he said. He was saying, look, looking back on it, this is how I would feel, but damn it, I'm still going for it because I'm not satisfied.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
I'm saying that's not good enough. Looking back on it, it should kill him.
I got 3 gold medals are better than no college championship, no gold medals.
The only thing that should be on his mind at that level of play is championship.
You know what? I don't disagree with that, but I still should have reached out to him.
Yes. All right, we'll move on now. Coming up, Kirk Cousins said the Redskins should be the Spurs of the NFL. Interesting comparison. Are Max and Stephen A. on board with this? That's next. Rio has not been easy work as many expected for Team USA. It was another close one Sunday night, beating a Tony Parkerless France team by just 3 points, 100-97. Klay Thompson was the leading scorer with 30. Kevin Durant had just 7 points. But here's what KD had to say after the game. Quote, obviously everybody wants us to win by a lot of points, but it's not how it's going to go this time. We've got to be prepared for a grind-out game. We showed the last 3 games we can grind it out. Max, I want to start with you on this one.
Yep.
Do you have a problem with Durant's comments here?
I'm going to be unfair to Kevin Durant right now.
Okay.
I do. Because, look, I understand to begin with that this is not one of our super teams. Mm-hmm. In 2004, when we didn't win the gold, only 2 of the top 11 American MVP finishers, right, of the top 12 MVP, only 2 of the top 11 who were American were on the team. Didn't have Shaq, didn't have Kobe, didn't have Garnett. We didn't win. In 2012, when we did, all 5 of the top MVP finishers were on the team. We're on the American team. So we crushed everyone. Right now, Durant is the only one of the top 5 MVP finishers on the team. So we recognize it's not one of those super teams. It's not a dream team. We had the dream team, we had the redeem team 2, whatever you want to call it. And now we have this, which is more in line with the kind of American teams that don't win the gold medal, partly because the rest of the world is caught up. They're playing against other NBA caliber players, not always all-stars, but guys in rotations, national teams that are used to playing together when these guys are kind of thrown together. But Garnett is and should be compared to the greatest players who ever lived. Excuse me, Garnett. Kevin Durant is and should be compared to the greatest players who ever lived. And it's just not his kind of personality, but one of the reasons that Kobe and LeBron, as LeBron became a mature player, were so critical on the Redeem team is that they set the tone. They held players accountable. They elevated the level of play. They even call all Kobe does is shoot. No. They have a positive influence in terms of the winning culture and what's expected of the team. And when you look at Kevin Durant, on paper, you watch him on the court, LeBron James, the greatest small forward who ever lived, past Larry Bird. Kevin Durant should be nipping at his heels. But if you talk about the greatest small forwards who ever lived, Larry Bird's still going to come in ahead of Durant. Well, it's because Larry Bird won championships as the alpha on championship teams that had other Hall of Fame players, including Kevin McHale and others, and a former MVP of the finals in Dennis Johnson and Parrish and all these guys. Bird was the alpha and the unquestioned best player on those teams that won 3 championships in an era where you were going up against Western Conference powerhouses, like especially the Lakers, as we all know. And because of that kind of personality of Bird's, even though when you look at their offense, Bird passed better and rebounded better, more of a kind of like a power forward type, but the way Durant shoots, Durant's size, Durant's ability to get to the... I mean, Durant really should... Durant's ability to play defense in a way that Bird couldn't, because Durant can be an excellent defender when he chooses and is generally underrated. He should be right there. But this little thing in his personality that's really brought to light here, where when, you know, the kind of teams that crush the international opposition, those are the legends teams. And this is something less than a legends team. And the best player is Durant, but he really should be in that first category. And it's that kind of beta personality, I think, that's stopping him from being there. Anyone who wants to rip their hair out about that, I get it. It's not fair to hold him or anyone to that standard, but Durant's own abilities and talents and track record so far indicates that that's the group to which he really belongs and yet somehow hasn't yet joined. I think this is a reflection of that.
Well, you're wrong on several fronts. Number one, it's totally fair to judge Kevin Durant that way. The way that you judged him, you threw it out the window by saying maybe it's unfair. It's totally fair. He is one of the top 3 players in the world. Your critique and dissection of him is appropriate. It is right on the money. Kevin Durant is one of the top 3 players in the world. Kevin Durant is a superstar. Kevin Durant should be mentioned amongst the all-time greats in terms of his talent. But his lack of production, meaning a championship, combined with his unwillingness to be that alpha dog per se, has inhibited him. There is no way around it. But let me tell you the points that you're missing more than anything else. Pointing the finger at Kevin Durant in any other way outside of what his talent and leading the way in that regard should do, I think you're missing the boat. To me, the people most responsible is Team USA. These are superstars that you got to commit to winning a gold medal. Why the hell do you have them in Las Vegas for just a week? And then after just a week, you got these week scrimmages set up. You know, it's got them in Las Vegas for training camp for a week. And then afterwards, you got these week scrimmages set up. Excuse me, whether it's Australia or Serbia or France or whomever, these are grown men who play together. The chemistry, the cohesiveness, the camaraderie, all of that stuff is there. Not to mention patriotism, because we might wear the red, white, and blue, and we might sing it, but everything about our nation as it pertains to professional sports leans and veers towards individual brands being elevated above all else. You don't get that impression with the other teams, you know, globally. And so that's a disadvantage. That's a challenge that America has to overcome as it pertains to basketball and superstar players. 1 week of training camp in Vegas, after they've been chilling for the offseason, Lord knows what they were doing in terms of being lackadaisical, understanding that the 82-game season combined with playoff competition is going to take place, lavishing in wealth and fame and beyond, not to mention commercials and building their brand and doing all of this other stuff in the offseason, and all you've got is 1 week in Vegas for a training camp, and then after that, the weakest stiffs of competition that you could think of in order to prepare them to go up against grown men, even when you recognize the fact that you can no longer use just college players because you're going up against grown men, makes no sense whatsoever. So I think you've missed the boat in terms of pointing out Kevin Durant. I think more of the onus should be placed on the shoulders of Team USA.
If Kobe Bryant and LeBron James were on this team, if Kobe still had something left to play and LeBron James, then they could practice for a week and have all those excuses, but they would still make sure the team was ready to go. Now, Team USA hasn't lost. I don't want to get out ahead, but it's 3 consecutive tight games. And while you're right, chemistry is big, and these other national teams play together and know each other better and everything, when you actually look at the talent on the roster, maybe you'll have 2 rotation pieces.
Yep.
I got you.
KD does have the 3rd highest scoring average, only behind MJ and Wilt. But I want to get to another player on that Team USA, Carmelo Anthony. He put up 10 last night. You spoke to him over the weekend. Can you share that with us?
It was a rough Friday night, to say the least. After they played, Team USA played, Carmelo Anthony reached out to me from Rio, and he was not pleased at all with what I had to say. And look, I'm a native New York. I'm a diehard Knicks fan. And in most situations, I'll be damned if I apologize about anything with the Knicks. It's 1973 since the championship has come to New York City. As far as I'm concerned, the quotes that I saw from Carmelo Anthony about a gold medal and it being satisfactory, I meant every damn word I said until he reached out and educated me about the fact that his interview was taken completely out of context. He specifically said, according to him, that, of course, I still got a few years to go. Of course, I'm pursuing an NBA championship, and I'm starving for it. If I look back on my career and I don't win a championship, and what I have to lean on is what I accomplished in college, what I accomplished in the pros, what I accomplished in Olympic competition, I'm going to look at my career as being a great career. But I have unfinished business. Trust me on that. So, in other words, what he was trying to say is that by no means did he give the impression, under any circumstances, that 2 or 3 gold medals would be satisfactory for him. And for me, of all people, to sit up there and to imply otherwise was incredibly insulting to him. Here's where he got me, Max and Molly. I'm very big on this, just so you know, in all my years of covering the NBA. One of the reasons why I don't hesitate to get on cats is because this cell phone right here and my other phone, I am accessible to every NBA player and every athlete that you can find. I'm the easiest reporter in the world to find. If you are a professional athlete and I talk about you, I always make sure, whether it's to you or it's to people in your camp or your team, that you know where to find me. I don't hide. Here's the problem. With Melo, who I've known for more than a decade, he's a guy that I communicate with often. I should have spoken to him before I went on the air because I have access to him. Because the number one question he asked me, how the hell could you go on the air and say that without calling me? You always call or text first. Why did you not do that this time? And I was like, you were in Rio. You know, you're at the Olympics. He said, you've reached me when I've been out of the country before. He got me. He's right. That's why I had to come on the air and confess to that and man up and apologize, because I felt the way that I felt, and I would still feel the same way if indeed he meant the quote the way that it was taken. But the fact of the matter is, had I reached out to him like I normally do, I would have gotten his perspective. And this time, I did not do that. That's on me. I got to apologize to that man. I was wrong.
Fine, should have reached out, but the point, I think, remains, that's still, the content of the quote is still the same. Of course, he wants to win a championship, but if he doesn't, he'd be okay with the 3 gold medals and all that? Could you imagine, if you're an ISO scorer, if that's what you do, you have that kind of mentality, could you imagine Kobe Bryant ever making a claim like that if he was this deep into his career without a championship, that one day he'd be okay with gold medals and stuff? Well, that's what Melo was saying, because I had our researchers look for the articles. I don't see the articles anywhere, anything like that. I saw guys, you know, Melo was saying that's not what he said. He was saying, look, looking back on it, this is how I would feel, but damn it, I'm still going for it because I'm not satisfied. Yeah. That's what he said. I'm saying that's not good enough. Looking back on it, it should kill him.
I got 3 gold medals are better than no college championship, no gold medals.
The only thing that should be on his mind at that level of play is championship.
You know what? I don't disagree with that, but I still should have reached out to him.
Yes. All right, we'll move on now. Coming up, Kirk Cousins said the Redskins should be the Spurs of the NFL. Interesting comparison. Are Max and Stephen A. on board with this? That's next. Capital. That's where we go. Kirk Cousins wants his Washington Redskins teammates to emulate the San Antonio Spurs. Stay out of the drama, the limelight, keep quiet, and just win. Quote, I've told my teammates that I'd like to be the San Antonio Spurs of the NFL, be super boring, and maybe people at the end of the season just go, wow, they had a really good year, and no one talked about it. Max, what's Cousins saying here?
I like Kirk Cousins a lot, and I think that he went from a guy who looked maybe like, are they trying to give him the job because he looks out of central casting? Or, like, what has he really done to show you could be a good quarterback? And then last year he had the chance and he showed you he could be a good quarterback. And I understand what he's saying here, Stephen A. I understand he's saying, look, I just want to be that kind of organization like the Spurs. Just put your head down and get the job done. The problem is that is so overboard to even aspirationally. The Spurs are so beyond the scope of Washington right now. Think about this for a second. The Washington team name, a slur for a group of people. Could you imagine the Spurs ever, embroiled in that kind of controversy and then digging in their heels? The constant coaching changes in Washington. That's the opposite of the Spurs. The Spurs have an overarching philosophy that doesn't exist in Washington. Splashy free agent signings. Is that the Spurs? I mean, yes, they got LaMarcus Aldridge here and there, targeted free agent signings, going all in with resources, draft picks for 100 years to get a player in RG3 who then busts. Does that sound like the Spurs to anyone? And even the quarterback now, who's coming out and saying that he wants to just fly low and under the radar and just put your heads down and get the job done and be like the Spurs, he's the one who's most famous for saying, you like that. Imagine Tim Duncan walking out of there, you like that. I mean, that's just not, what I would say is I understand the aspiration, holding out the Spurs as the model franchise, which they are. But, why don't you concentrate on being the Indiana Pacers or the Kansas City Chiefs first, and then worry about the Spurs once you get there, especially coming from the you like that guy. I get it, but no, not so much, Kirk Cousins.
Max Kellerman, I'm not going to hold you accountable for this. Any more than I'm going to hold Kirk Cousins accountable for this. When you don't know, you don't know. You see, look, you could have style. I think Max Kellerman, he dresses in Tom Ford suits, looks very, very sharp. Max Kellerman is one of the coolest dudes. He's my brother. He's my, like Skip was my brother from another mother. He's my younger brother from another mother.
Here
my
it
little
comes.
brother from another
Here
mother.
It comes.
Backhanded, we know.
But what you don't get, Max Kellerman, is the same thing the very nice Kirk Cousins, who we had the pleasure of meeting and talking to at their camp in Richmond, Virginia, over a week ago. He doesn't get that either. There's something to be said for being a brother, Max Kellerman, and I say that affectionately. Washington, D.C. is affectionately known as Chocolate City to the brothers and sisters in this world, okay? Now, there's a level of flair, there's a level of bravado, a level of swag that we have. And damn it, we want you to have it too. And if you don't have it, you need to be elite. Otherwise, we would prefer to do without you. This is how we roll, okay? This is how we roll. And when you have Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson entering the final year of their contract with much to prove, and Deshaun Jackson, when healthy, being arguably the most elite deep threat in the game. When you've got this kid like Josh Doxson coming out of TCU who can do some things and might take one of their spots, which is why he was drafted, by the way, let's just call it what it is. When you have a stud like Jordan Reed at the tight end spot, okay? All right, when you've got that going on, all right? When you've got an owner who's a billionaire, proud of it, and loves rivaling the Dallas Cowboys. When you supplement that by bringing in Josh Norman to buffer your secondary to pair him opposite of Breland, and you got Josh Norman that you're going to put him in the same division as Odell Beckham Jr. because you want the sizzle, you want the headlines, you want the wins too, but you want all of that comes with it because it will buffer and pad your wallets. It will generate a level of enthusiasm and focus on your franchise, and as a result, it's going to put more dollars in Daniel Snyder's wallet. You don't want to hear your quarterback, who you're paying $19.95 million to, by the way, even though it's just for this 1 year, you don't want to hear him saying, I just want to go about my business quietly, and, we just want to win, and we want to be the San Antonio Spurs. No, you want to win like the San Antonio Spurs, absolutely. But you don't want their personality if you're Daniel Snyder. You want headlines. You want sizzle. You want to win, and you want to win in the court of public opinion in terms of the headlines. You want First Take and ESPN and other shows talking about the Redskins all day and every day, other than for their name, according to Max Kellerman. You don't want that kind of publicity. But outside of that, you want everything that comes along with it. So you don't want your quarterback being some choir boy, that doesn't make any headlines. Of course you want him to win. That's the priority. And you can forgive it if he wins. But if you're marginal, average, or even just slightly above average, I mean, damn, give us something to talk about while you're winning a few games, because you don't want to be that boring franchise. See, the Spurs can afford to be boring because they got 5 rings. and Tim Duncan's illustrious 19 to 20-year career, they won a minimum, they won at least 60% of their games every single year. Well, we all know that the Washington Redskins haven't won a Super Bowl since 1991. So, again, the crawl before you walk mentality is apropos here. But let me be the first to say, if you're in the same division as that phony joke that's called America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, you don't want to sit up there and lose headlines to them all the time while not winning. You want it all. And that's how Kirk Cousins' attitude should be. We want it all.
That's the problem. I'm shocked at you. You're taking your... This is the problem, really. Okay. A fish rots from the head down. And with Dan Snyder as the owner of that team, what you're dealing with is a rotten fish. The problem is that if that's true, what you're saying, especially...
a rotten fish?
Well, the fish rots from the head down.
Go ahead.
Yeah. He's the head. The problem is, if what you're saying is true, and if the preference is to do it with flair, that's taking your eyes off the ball. Look, San Antonio can do it because they have equity, 5 rings. How do you think they got those 5 rings? The overarching philosophy of the organization is to put your head down and get your work done. Then the rings follow. What you're talking about...
That's how they got 5 rings.
Yeah.
So Kobe and Shaq got 3 because of because of being quiet boys and quiet.
Now you're getting to it. What you're talking about, is the Showtime Lakers. The late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, contrary to what you say about George Steinbrenner. In fact, Dr. Jerry Buss is the greatest owner in the history of American team sports.
Blasphemy. But go ahead. Go ahead.
We can get into that another time.
Go ahead.
He wanted to do it with flair and win. It's the hardest thing to do. And unless you're a genius, as Dr. Buss was, and apparently Dan Snyder is not, it's not going to work. You can't worry about bringing the entertainment value in pursuit of winning. You have to worry first and foremost, and usually exclusively, about winning.
Like the Patriots.
It's another great example. You know what the safest pick in sports is at the beginning of every year? Who's going to be there at the end? Say the Patriots and the Spurs. And that's the opposite of the flashy kind of organization. Put your head down and get your work done. And if you can do that with flair, as Dr. Buss did during Showtime, and then again with Kobe and Shaq, good for you. I mean, that's amazing. That's the highest level. Dan Snyder has not shown the ability to operate on half that level. First, concentrate on winning.
This is not about Daniel Snyder. This is about what Kirk Cousins had to say. And as the quarterback, what I'm trying to say to you is this. Yes, you want to go out there and win. But you know what? It's Chocolate City. We ain't interested in a bunch of quiet boys being all quiet and chilling. This ain't San Antonio, Texas. It's D.C., baby. It's the nation's capital. You understand? Is a different flair. What's up?
No, I get all that, but I think we're forgetting one name, RG3. Don't you think part of this was his coming out to say that RG3, all we talked about was they wanted him to be quiet, stop talking to the media, that kind of thing. So now he's coming out and trying to set precedent. We're not going to do that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
No. You could definitely make the argument that that's where he was going because RG3 made the mistake. But understand something. RG3 didn't make a mistake because RG3 was in the headlines. RG3 made a mistake because he didn't back up the brand that he was trying to build. He appeared to be...
But he was talking a little too much.
But that's what I'm saying. He appeared to be more interested in building his brand and living off the brand that was RG3 rather than going out on the field. You did it in the wrong order. But that's what this comes down to. By the way, I always thought but if RG3 had focused more on being the greatest football player he could possibly be and being successful, but then he talked smack, it was in the headlines or whatever the case may be, DC would love him. They say he's ours. He's ours. We're good with it.
I think RG3, I think that's always been kind of a misconception about RG3. Where did it start going wrong for RG3? Not in the way that he wasn't concentrating on football, in the way that he had drunk the Kool-Aid about how a football player is supposed to act and talked Shanahan into putting him back into a playoff game with a bum knee. When that injury was exacerbated, that was essentially the end of RG3. He's been like RG2 or RG1 since then. RG3 existed right up till that moment, quarterbacked them into the playoffs, and because of that old school, old-timey football mentality, oh, shucks, coach just put me in the game no matter what, that's where it all went wrong. I think it's a total misconception that he wasn't football enough. That might have been
where it all went wrong on the football field, but it didn't help that you were taking photos leading into your wedding, asking for wedding gifts.
Yeah.
That didn't help.
I forgot about that.
That didn't
stop it.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. When we come back, we go to another quarterback. Cam Newton's criticism has nothing to do with race. This, according to Cam, is he right? Stephen A. and Max will weigh in on that when First Take comes back. Stay here. Steve, quote, "It's not racism. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'll let you be the judge." I don't look at it like that. I look at it like someone who has certain beliefs and I have my own belief and we can agree to disagree on certain things. But this is what makes sports so amazing, that we can start a discussion around a table in the newspaper and the magazines that will get people's attention. And that's what sports does. Newton, of course, created headlines before Super Bowl 50 when he described himself as an African-American quarterback. That may scare a lot of people because they haven't seen nothing they can compare me to. He later backed off those comments, saying that the game was bigger than those labels. Stephen A., what do you make of Cam's latest comments?
Well, I applaud them. I'm happy that Cam Newton made these comments. I agree with him. Everything is not about race. And I think that we live in a society where it's two different kind of things going on. Okay. There are times when things are racial, but not racism or racist. People come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different environments, etc. And as a result of that, they have different experiences. And when they express it, how it's absorbed, more often than not, tends to define how it's defined and how it's perceived and absorbed by the masses. And I think that leads to polarizing our society more and more every day. I think when people listen to folks, particularly folks from the black community, explain things, you will find that a lot more often than not, folks are not calling anybody racist. What they're saying is that from a racial perspective, you may view it differently than we do. Now, that's twofold. On one hand, you're white folks, you have to understand that from an historical perspective, you're going to affect people in a certain way because history affects people in a certain way, and they have a right to be affected by it. On the other hand, if you're the black community, we've got to guard ourselves against getting so emotional over everything that we find ourselves in putting others in a position where they don't even want to express themselves. Therefore, nobody is honest, nobody is forthcoming, and we continue to be divided. Cam Newton hit the target in the middle here. He's a guy that came into the league looking up to Warren Moon, first black quarterback in the Hall of Fame. And Warren Moon, he asked Warren Moon one time, I remember reading an article recently by Jeff Jadea, who used to work here now at the NFL Network, great reporter. He interviewed Cam Newton, and Cam Newton told him about he had asked Warren Moon a question about what's the one thing that he regret. And he regretted. And Warren Moon said that I didn't enjoy the game more. Well, back when Warren Moon was playing, assimilation was the order of the day. You were a quarterback. You had to conduct yourself in a certain way in order to be embraced and thereby accepted by mainstream, therefore put in a position where you were allowed to elevate and let your talents shine and speak for you. You know, but you were relatively mild-mannered in the public eye. A Warren Moon, a Doug Williams, a Randall Cunningham, the list goes on and on. In the case of Cam Newton, just like Jeff Jadea wrote in his article, we're talking about evolution. We're talking about a Cam Newton a la a Magic Johnson, somebody who's vibrant and bullion and had a great personality and had a magic smile and, you know, was just magnetic and you gravitated to him. But along the way, the difference between a Magic Johnson and a Cam Newton is that Magic Johnson played in a league that was where a vast majority of the athletes are black, meaning around 80%. It's still a majority black in the NFL, but it's in the 60s as opposed to the 80 percentile. And what you have is a situation where even though Magic Johnson was the leader and he was a superstar, he was Showtime, he had that smile, and he had a white adversary to go up against, which was that of Larry Bird. So it sort of offset itself. And you didn't mind Showtime against the blue collar and, you know, all of this other stuff. Yep. Cam essentially is in a league by himself as it pertains to his behavior because of the impact that he has. That smile, coupled with his level of production, coupled with the dabbing, coupled with the doing, you know, giving footballs to kids and all of this other stuff, he's also a guy that's judged significantly more than the average dude playing in his position, because the average dude playing his position don't conduct themselves that way. So he's held to a higher standard. I applaud Cam Newton for seeming to have a sense of that reality and recognizing that at times he's not as much a victim of race per se as he is a victim of quote unquote assimilation, how you're supposed to act, playing a certain position, how you're supposed to act being an NFL quarterback, how you're supposed to act because Tom Brady acted this way and Peyton Manning acted this way, and even the Warren Moon and the Randall Cunninghams and the Doug Williams acted this way, and the Russell Wilson today acts this way. You're not supposed to be any different. his sense that those things may play a role in judging and defining him, and him having the intellect and the poise to express himself in that way, instead of leaning on the easy explanation of race as the cause for any vitriol coming in his direction, I think Cam Newton should be applauded for that, because the race card is something that needs to be employed when necessary. That is not always. That is not most of the time. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And as a black community, we have to recognize that.
The distinction between racist and racial is important, of course, because race has been the defining issue of American life. I mean, it's been this way for centuries now, and it remains so, even though there's this urge to live in a post-racial world. The O.J. documentary that we did was, you know, here on ESPN was partly about that. O.J. wanted to live in a post-racial world, and he just couldn't. It wasn't the reality.
O.J.'s a bad example because he was a complete sellout. He didn't like his own. He didn't want to be associated with his own. Right. That is entirely different.
Let's table O.J. in that case, because I don't want to get sidetracked. So Cam makes the distinction between racial and racist, I think. That's what you take from this. And listen, even in this election cycle, racial identity politics are playing an enormous role here. And so we live in that world still here in the United States. And the idea that you can separate race from these issues, I don't think is possible. I think partly the reaction to Cam is viewed through a racial prism, and that colors, so to speak, for many, the way he's perceived. Now, that doesn't mean that listen, of course there are some racist idiots who see him not jump on the ball in the Super Bowl and go, see a white man would have jumped on that. But I'm not talking about them. There are always outliers and fanatics and morons. I'm talking about the general reaction of normal people to Cam. It can still be colored, again, so to speak, by racial identity without people even being aware of it. Because when you look at Cam's overall behavior, dabbing when he scores, so what? Handing balls to children doesn't seem to get nearly as much press. The fact that he was the best player in the world last year, you know, there's constant kind of negative talk around it in a way that there wasn't when, let's say, Brett Favre was the best player in the world, or Aaron Rodgers, or Tom Brady, even until he was scandalized, you know, through the Patriots, through Deflategate and Spygate and all that kind of stuff. So I think you can't separate race from it. But if his claim is basically that that's not the prime mover here, that's not the main catalyst of people's negative reactions, I think that's fair to say. It may not be the prime mover, but I do think it's involved somehow because there's too much vitriol against it. It
may be involved, but understand that he doesn't want to focus on it, number one, because that's not something tangible that you can point to and prove. It may be there, but certain times it's more provable than others. But when you look at it from that perspective, you also got to gauge when to sit up there and bring something like that up. Michael Jordan deciding to make a donation, you know, to address Black Lives Matter, police brutality and the like, and violence against police officers, all of that stuff. It was so profound because Michael Jordan doesn't customarily say something or do something that brings attention to a particular cause in that regard that we know of. So when he felt the need to do so, it matters. If Cam Newton takes this position and he says something like that, right, but then he speaks out against something, it's going to resonate significantly. Whereas if he was so quick to point out race about every little thing that came his way,
the so-called, the more the so-called, as you put it, race card is played, the less credible it seems when you play it. So he, in a sense, is building equity with football fans, at least, so that if and when he decides to address the issue, it carries more weight. I think that's legitimate.
I don't think it's solely race, but I think it's a part of it. I think it's four-pronged. I think it's the race issue with him in terms of criticism. I think it's the position he plays, how quarterbacks are supposed to act and be the leader of the team and not speak. He's that new era, the younger generation that's having social media and things like that that we don't see of the other quarterbacks, and then also being a victim of his success. No one's as talented as Cam since the Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers
He seems to be criticized more than others who've been in his position in the recent past.
Let's also remember not to ignore proximity. I love North Carolina. I went to Winston-Salem State. I'm a proud graduate of Winston-Salem State University, which is just an hour away. He presides in the Bible Belt.
Yes.
It matters. It matters.
I think it's a good point.
Demographic, another point there as well. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. Conor McGregor ready and willing to take on Floyd Mayweather. Max, should Floyd consider? Let the trash talking begin. Earlier this year, Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather teased the possibility of a crossover fight. So on Friday, Conor said he's still interested in boxing Floyd by throwing some trash talk at the undefeated star. Quote, I don't really hold it against him. I wouldn't want to come into my world. How is he going to come into my world? He's a novice where I come from. He's a phenomenal boxer, phenomenal athlete, and an intelligent businessman, but he's a novice in true fighting. That is just a simple fact. I would not show up not confident for a boxing match. I would show up to kill that man and take that win 100%. Why dominate one world when you can dominate two? We'll see how that plays out. Right, Max Kellerman? Why dominate one world? Should Floyd consider this fight?
Yep. Listen, let me start by saying I don't want to see it. Why? Because if it actually airs, I'll watch it.
100%.
But as a boxing fan, as a boxing purist, don't make a mockery of things, Floyd, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm Floyd Mayweather and someone wants to give me $100 million to fight a guy who has no shot, because Conor McGregor in a boxing ring has exactly zero chance against Floyd. Just like Floyd in an octagon has zero chance against Conor McGregor. It always boggles my mind that people don't understand this. They're two different sports. Take the best basketball player, put him on the gridiron. Is he going to be as good as Cam Newton? No. I don't care. LeBron James could be amazing at football. He ain't going to be Cam Newton on the football field. And vice versa. You can't take the best football player and he's going to be LeBron James on the basketball court. It's just two different sports. And even though they're both combat sports, people fail to see that. In the octagon, Floyd's got no shot. In the ring, Conor's got no shot. And, of course, it'll be contested in the ring because Mayweather's the bigger star, and he'll get Conor over there. Now, I understand people would say, if you're Floyd, careful, there's only downside here. What if he gets lucky? That ain't going to happen. There's nothing Conor McGregor can do to Floyd Mayweather in a boxing ring, and they weigh the same. Well, look against Aldo. McGregor was going backwards and hit him with a power shot and knocked him out. If you think that shot would hit one of the greatest defensive fighters who ever lived, throw some cold water on that. It would never happen. What's going on here is Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest fighters ever. And for a great fighter, he's a good trash talker. I wouldn't say he's a great trash talker. He's a good trash talker for a great fighter. And Conor McGregor is a great trash talker for a good fighter. We know Conor McGregor's good. He's talented. I'm a huge fan of his. I applaud his willingness to take risks in a way that Floyd never did. But in a boxing ring, he's got no shot. And if you're Floyd Mayweather and someone's going to give you a 9-figure payday to really risk nothing, you'd be crazy not to take it. You'd be crazy not to take it, Stephen A.
I don't think he should consider it because he's the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet, and I don't think people who are not in your class should deserve the right, should get the right to step into the ring with you. Just like I don't think Floyd should have the right to step into the octagon with Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor would hurt him very, very badly if Floyd Mayweather stepped into an octagon. Floyd Mayweather would pick him apart and embarrass him in a boxing ring because I don't think Conor McGregor would touch him, me personally. And by the way, Conor McGregor got touched by Nate Diaz. I mean, Nate Diaz, he would miss Floyd by a mile. And I got nothing but respect for all of those fighters, especially the guys in the UFC.
Different sport.
It's a different sport. I see what they put themselves through. But if you see the blows that they throw, Floyd would literally sit there. Floyd would duck a punch, look at Max, could you pass me a cheeseburger, let me take a bite of this, and come back up before Nate Diaz, even got a chance to swing again. I mean, it's that slow to somebody like Floyd in a boxing ring, whereas in the octagon, they both hurt Floyd, okay? No boxer needs to step in the octagon. No UFC fighter needs to step in a boxing ring. Having said all of that, I'm adamant about the fact that Floyd should not consider this for the sport of boxing, for his greatness, and also you take into the consideration that, listen, anybody could get lucky, and I don't care who you are. Anybody could get caught once.
No, Sugar Ray Leonard said about that?
One punch.
Sugar Ray Leonard said no such thing as luck in the boxing ring.
Well, he can say whatever he wants. He's the great Sugar Ray Leonard. I respectfully disagree. I've disagreed with him when he sat right here in front of me. I ain't going to be scared to disagree with him now that he's not here and I'm on national television talking about him. I love Sugar Ray, but damn it, I disagree. Anybody could get lucky. For all I know, Conor McGregor might just through habit, might knee him. You know what I mean? We just don't know. We just don't know. You can get it. It's just not worth it. So basically what it comes down to is this. The only reason we would talk about it, because it would be the most hyped fight you can imagine, because I can't think of, outside of Muhammad Ali, I can't think of two better talkers on a planet as pugilists than Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather.
I think that's a mismatch as talkers. I don't think Floyd can hang with him as a talker.
You might be right, but what I'm saying is it doesn't take away from the fact that Floyd is great at it. It just means Conor McGregor would be greater. The point is, very, very rarely, if not at all, have we ever seen two guys fighting one another that would bring so much hype because of their mouth. But in the end, it's a disservice and an insult to boxing fans everywhere for Conor McGregor to think that he can walk into the ring against Floyd Money Mayweather. Now, if this was Arturo Gatti, God rest his soul, that would be different, because Gatti ain't moving nowhere. He's going to be right in front of you. He's going to hit and be hit. It's rocking.
McGregor got no wins against Gatti either in the boxing ring.
I know that, but it's just you're fighting. But Floyd, who lives off defense, elusivity, evasion, you're going to get into the ring with him, and all you can do is throw punches. You can't kick. You can't knee. You can't wrestle. You can't use jiu-jitsu. You can't do. You have to. All you have is your fist, and you're going to touch Floyd Money Mayweather. I don't know if Conor McGregor would connect with a punch. Seriously.
He wouldn't. No, he would not. And Floyd would thoroughly humiliate, embarrass him, and knock him out as he pleased. I mean, it's a total mismatch. And I'm glad you're taking that position, Stephen A. You're a great fight fan, and that's the purest position to take for the dignity of boxing and of MMA. Like, don't do this. But this gets back to, oh, by the way, one thing about the talking game here. Hear what Conor McGregor is saying about Floyd. Floyd's running around the Showtime offices looking to get his $100 million. He's like, Floyd's running around getting my money. When he gets my money and brings it, I mean, Conor McGregor talks trash better than anybody in sports right now.
He backs it up.
And he thought, Conor McGregor's a good fighter. And in the ring, he's the kind of fighter, and his career is the kind of fighter I like. He takes risks. I love that. But what we're talking about here is the Floyd Mayweather paradigm. I talk about this sometimes, how full contact sports like football, for example, combat sports like boxing and MMA, they're essentially exploitative. The fans and the networks exploit the participants. Floyd Mayweather and Al Heyman turned that paradigm around, a full 180. They said, oh, no, time out. Now the participants are going to exploit the networks and the fans. We're not going to give you the fights that you all want to see where it's going to be toe-to-toe and this guy winds up with brain damage. We're going to pick and choose just right for the biggest possible payday with minimal risk. So if you want to say as a fight fan, do I love the way Floyd's career went? No, because I felt that there were fights of high risk that I really wanted to see him take at various moments that he didn't take. But if I had a son and he was a fighter, and someone said he could have any career in the history of boxing, I'd say I want Floyd Mayweather's career. He took the least damage for the most money and the most credit over the most years. I mean, he won the fight game, as it were, and here is more of the same.
Which is why he's hated.
The criticism of Floyd, in boxing. The criticism of Floyd here would be like, come on, you're making a mockery of things. This is zero risk. It's a disgrace to boxing. It's a carnival. It's a sideshow. And yet, if I was Floyd, oh, you want to give me $100 million to fight someone who doesn't have a chance? Bring it.
No, I think when you're the best, bump that. Don't waste your time with it. The man has already made $1 billion. How much is enough?
He certainly doesn't need it. Well, we might not get to see Mayweather-McGregor, but you can see Diaz-McGregor, too. That one's this Saturday. I will be buying that one in Las Vegas. But speaking of stealing the show on Saturday night, that was Dak Prescott, who did it in the Coliseum. Will we be seeing more of him this season? Tim Hasselbeck will join us for that debate. It's next. Stay here. Back to the desk. Always good to see you.
Good to be here with you.
What's going on, man?
Thank you for being with us. All right, I want to get your thoughts here. So when are we going to see Prescott playing this season?
Oh, Lord.
Listen, we'll see him at some point, I believe. Listen, out of the last 6 seasons, Tony Romo has started 16 games twice. I mean, he's in his mid-30s. The reality is that guys get hurt. He's shown that he gets hurt often. And I will say, with the type of injury that he's had, with these collarbone injuries, you know, when quarterbacks get hit, they're defenseless. It's how they get hit. And one of the biggest challenges is how you land. It's one of the reasons they've changed the way quarterbacks can get driven to the ground. It's an easy way to break your collarbone. I just think with Tony Romo's history with that type of injury, the way quarterbacks get hit, and the fact that he hasn't started 16 games that often in recent history, means we will see the backup quarterback in Dallas at some point, not because Dak Prescott is better, but because he's most likely going to be the backup.
Educate me about something here, Tim, because I have this problem with, I'm trying to figure out the Dallas Cowboys in this regard. Tony Romo wanted them to buffer their offensive line. Jerry Jones decided to do that. So he finds himself in a situation, or the Cowboys find themselves in a situation where they've been challenged at the backup quarterback spot for years. Is it because Jerry Jones doesn't know what he's doing? Is it because of the extreme amount of faith he's had in Tony Romo and it has not been prioritized? Because we're making a big deal out of Dak Prescott because after one preseason game, because essentially what we're saying is, good Lord, could they please have a backup quarterback for a change, because that's something that they haven't had in recent memory.
No, the reality is, I mean, remember, what was it, a week ago, everyone's like, Nick Foles needs to go to Dallas. Okay, yeah. Right. So the reality is that it's hard to find 32 starting quarterbacks. So now whittle it down and try to find a good backup. One of the things that's been a big takeaway just watching 1 week of preseason football is some teams look like, okay, you know what, you're all right if that guy goes in and plays. Other teams, you think, wow, this isn't a good scenario. Look, it's hard to find starters, never mind backups. I was one of those guys. I had a preseason game where I completed 14 out of 15 passes. But let me tell you something. It would have been bad if I was playing. It's just the reality. I mean, the truth is, it's a hard position. So having two guys is difficult. So, look, they had a former first-round draft pick as a backup. It didn't work out. They had Kyle Orton. He decided to retire. It's hard to figure out backup quarterbacks.
And this is why the value of a guy like Eli, who, knock wood, who never misses a snap, let alone a game.
Would Ryan Nassib be good?
We don't know.
I mean, listen, but let me tell you something. Preseason has not been good to him. You know, and it doesn't tell you everything, but it hasn't been good to him. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if you're Dallas, if you're a fan, you have to be encouraged. It's just a preseason game, but he should have been a perfect 12 for 12. I mean, two guys dropped the ball, and one of them in particular was on the money. Yeah, you like the way he managed the game when he had that second and really long and then didn't get carried away, and then it was second and long, a third and long, and they wound up kicking a field goal because he didn't get out ahead of himself, not to mention the down-the-field throws, little dink and dunk passes. He showed a good feel for the game and everything. I think it's just a small piece of evidence, but if you need to know what column it goes into, the pros or the cons, that goes into the pros for Dallas.
It's huge. And I think the other thing you would have to throw into the mix is the rookie, first time out there. There was a lot of excitement around that preseason game. It's Monday Night Football.
What about the fact,
the
fact that they're very unfamiliar with him because he came out of Mississippi State and the pro level, meaning the Los Angeles Rams, didn't know anything about Dak Prescott?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more to Max's point about, listen, he made good throws. Look, we saw, other young quarterbacks get out there and not make good throws. I mean, I think in terms of what you can evaluate, what you can evaluate is, hey, here's a guy that came out there, made good throws, and there was a lot of pressure associated with that. I don't care, what level you played at in college. When you go in there and you're addressing a huddle with that group of offensive linemen, with the receivers that they have there, with the guys that are playing, and you handle it the way that Dak Prescott handled it, you should be very, very encouraged.
The other thing is, if you talk about the O-line, and I think it was Stephen Jones, Stephen A., who really emphasized O-line play even over his old man's, desires to draft guy like Johnny Manziel, et cetera. When you 3 out of 4 years draft in the first round O-lineman, and then you have Dez Bryant and even, an aging Jason Witten, if the idea is, well, Prescott looked that good because he's behind that O-line and Dez Bryant's making those catches, well, that's who will be available to him ostensibly if and when he gets the shot. And given Romo's injury history, it's really when and not if.
Right. The thing I would say about this, and I think it's because everyone's so excited for football to start that you get the first week of preseason and everyone's going crazy about the first week of preseason.
Amen.
RG3 did this, Mark Sanchez did that. These are the situations. Week 3 of the preseason, you won't even remember what happened week 1 of the preseason. You won't.
The one thing I pay attention to when I'm looking at stuff, let's say, for example, let's use Dak Prescott as an example. fourth rounder. I understand back in the day when Tom Brady was playing, you know, he came out sixth round, blah, 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 blah. My point is that the advent of social media, with the technology that has elevated exponentially compared to what it once was, with all the tools available to coaches and beyond, I'm thinking, if Dak Prescott was this, if he was whatever, why did he fall to the fourth round?
Why did Russell Wilson fall?
Those are the kind of questions I'm not saying it to denigrate him in any way. I'm saying I wonder about these coaches. I wonder about these franchises. I wonder about the level of homework and thoroughness that a Tim Hasselbeck may do, but the people he's talking about may not do.
Listen, sometimes you just get it wrong. You know, you mentioned those guys. Right. Look, my brother played nearly 20 years and was a sixth-round pick. You know, I mean, but you go back and look at him, and he was terrible in college. I mean, the truth is, go look at his college
Talking about your brother like that?
It's miraculous that he even had the idea to say, hey, I'd like to draft this guy in Green Bay. I mean, just that's how it works. Look, Dak Prescott, I think there's a chance he would go around earlier if he didn't have, I believe it was kind of a DUI arrest, and I don't know what happened, you know, how that all played out and how people viewed that, because many people viewed him as a high-character guy, and but that certainly didn't help in the draft evaluation process. So, you know, I think sometimes it's difficult to get it right based on the offenses you play in, and then, quite honestly, how you fit into the team you go to really matters.
Yep. And that coaching staff, that organization, Tim, love having your perspective, the quarterback perspective on the subject.
I'm shocked that you dogged your brother like that.
Oh,
but that's okay. It's okay, Tim.
He dogged himself. He dogged himself.
I know.
Listen, you just got, like, it's all been recorded, okay? You can't pretend.
I think your family's done pretty good. I don't know, 2 NFL quarterbacks.
I'm just saying, I'm just wondering what Matt's going to do when y'all get home. That's all.
Listen, I was riding a tandem bike with him. I got stuck in the back, all right? I have a few shots to get
I got it.
Tim, thank you so much. You'll be back with us a little later in the show. We appreciate you making time. When we come back, Jeff Fisher getting a reported contract extension. The Rams are on board with this. You don't want to miss what Stephen A. has to say on this subject. That's next.
As far as I'm concerned, the quotes that I saw from Carmelo Anthony about a gold medal and it being satisfactory, I meant every word I said until he reached out and educated me about the fact that his interview was taken completely out of context. He specifically said, according to him, that, of course, I still got a few years to go. Of course, I'm pursuing an NBA championship, and I'm starving for it. If I look back on my career and I don't win a championship, and what I have to lean on is what I accomplished in college, what I accomplished in the pros, what I accomplished in Olympic competition, I'm going to look at my career as being a great career. But I have unfinished business. Trust me on that. So, in other words, what he was trying to say is that by no means did he give the impression, under any circumstances, that 2 or 3 gold medals would be satisfactory for him. And for me, of all people, to sit up there and to imply otherwise was incredibly insulting to him. Here's where he got me, Max and Molly. I'm very big on this, just so you know, in all my years of covering the NBA. One of the reasons why I don't hesitate to get on cats is because this cell phone right here and my other phone, I am accessible to every NBA player and every athlete that you can find. I'm the easiest reporter in the world to find. If you are a professional athlete and I talk about you, I always make sure, whether it's to you or it's to people in your camp or your team, that you know where to find me. I don't hide. Here's the problem. With Melo, who I've known for more than a decade, he's a guy that I communicate with often. I should have spoken to him before I went on the air because I have access to him. Because the number one question he asked me, how the hell could you go on the air and say that without calling me? You always call or text first. Why did you not do that this time? And I was like, you in Rio. You know, you're at the Olympics. He said, you've reached me when I've been out of the country before. He got me. He's right. That's why I had to come on the air and confess to that and man up and apologize.
Maybe in a new city, but it appears they plan to stick with their old staff. Rams head coach Jeff Fisher and GM Les Snead are both coming up on the end of their respective current contracts. All parties want to get deals done, sources telling our Adam Schefter. Fisher addressed the report yesterday.
I don't know where those reports came from, and I've never gone into the details regarding my own personal situation. But, I haven't talked to Adam Schefter or anybody, so we'll see what happens.
Fisher's compiled a 27-36-1 record in 4 seasons with the Rams, but has not had more than 7 wins in any season with the franchise. But an extension potentially on the way. Stephen A., your thoughts?
I'm disappointed, to be quite honest with you. I don't know Jeff Fisher. He seemed a bit aloof there about the great Adam Schefter and others, and that's him. That's his business. Adam Schefter can handle his own business. I won't try to do so for him. And one of the things that I'm cognizant about is this, Tim and Max. I know sports, but I often use this line when I'm giving my speeches, when I'm on a lecture circuit. I'm brilliant because I know I'm not. I listen to those who are. And if you know more, you play.
That's what I'm doing on this show.
That's right. Every day. That's right. But if you play football, I will defer to you, and I will defer to your knowledge because I was never on that football field. I don't know. I measure results. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for over 23 years. That's what I do. Snead, I have no problem with it because as the GM, I'm looking at you and I'm looking at the roster that you accumulate. Not to say that Jeff Fisher doesn't play a role in that because obviously he does. But ultimately, I'm looking at Snead and I'm saying, you talking to me about an extension for him? When I look at Donald and I look at their defense overall and I look at, not Trey Mason with some of his problems, but I look at a Tavon Austin, I look at you drafting Goff, I look at some of the other pieces that you have, I look at your front seven, I say to myself, okay, I like that. I focus on Jeff Fisher in this regard. I mean no disrespect personally, but I got to look at results. Jeff Fisher has been a head coach in the National Football League for 21 seasons. 15 of them have been 500 or less. Actually, 10 have been under 500. The other 5 have been at 8-8. He did go to a Super Bowl in which he lost when Steve McNair was his quarterback in Tennessee. But outside of that, Jeff Fisher literally has, in terms of playoff appearances, a 6-15 record. He's been in the playoffs 6 times. He's been out of the playoffs 15 times. Not only does he keep getting a job, but one extension after another. Now they're moving to Los Angeles. So from St. Louis to Los Angeles. Now, I love St. Louis. Great town. You understand? I get it. But damn it, if you give me the choice to be in Missouri or to be in Los Angeles, what you think I'm going to pick? Life is nice. And it just amazes me how somebody like a Jeff Fisher can sit up there and have one losing season after another, and continues to get paid. He is making life very, very hard for me because, for example, I'm a guy, Tim, was on the record. I don't think Marvin Lewis should still be in. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a head coach, but I don't think you should have 12 years at the same franchise, never win a playoff game, and still keep your job there. You might deserve to be a head coach, but not there. I look at a Jason Garrett and I say, well, what have you done? Well, you shouldn't be there. Not to say that you shouldn't be a head coach, but I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I can't say anything about any coach unless I say something about Jeff Fisher because it amazes me how you can be a coach in today's NFL. This dude was a coach in the 80s. 90s, now here you are here, and you still got a head coaching job,
extension,
and you keep losing. I don't understand. I just don't.
Listen, I agree with everything you said. It's surprising to me. You talk about it just looking at the results. You're right. I think you start to look at it from a football perspective. You think about when he had success. It was a long time ago.
Long time.
And the way his teams had success were very different than the way teams have success now, or the way it's turned into an offensive game. It has been. And then you just take a look deeper into their offense. It's his staff. He was a defensive-minded guy. It's his staff. They were worse than any team on third down last year. Teams were better at 4th and 10 than the Rams were at 3rd and medium. I mean, it was horrible. They haven't developed the quarterback position. They had guys to try to do it. So, look, I don't disagree with it. And you take somebody, and you know this, Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin won multiple Super Bowls. They weren't putting together winning seasons, and he was out.
Look, I think I disagree about Snead. First of all, when you look at the Rams roster heading into this season, I'll get to Jeff Fisher in a second. They had a good front seven, a ferocious front seven, really when healthy. They had an offensive line that may have been a little overrated in terms of the numbers because they had Foles getting rid of the ball quickly, but still not a bad offensive line, I wouldn't say. They have the best up-and-coming running back in the game. They had a decent receiving core. Really, only thing they were missing was a quarterback, which is a big thing, and maybe a lead wideout. And when you have a draft where we've seen in drafts Odell Beckham and Sammy Watkins and others start as lead wideouts on a team, you see you can draft that position onto a team and acquire a lead wideout through the draft. Quarterback rookies, not so much. Here and there occasionally, but usually they're not good, just plug-and-play type guys. There were some veteran quarterbacks out on the market that were easily acquirable, like RG3, or maybe for a little more money, like Fitzpatrick. But they were out there. You could have signed a guy like that, drafted a lead wideout, and maybe been ready to go. But instead, they took all these resources, 1 million draft picks, to trade up for Goff, who's not considered like a slam dunk kind of Cam Newton or Andrew Luck out of the draft. And when you ask why was that done, Marcellus Wiley, my broadcast partner in L.A. and on Sports Nation, his theory at the time was, look, this gives Jeff Fisher runway because no one's expecting you to win with a rookie quarterback right away. And so this actually comes down to incentives being misaligned. The personal incentive for Jeff Fisher, get an extension, is different than what it should be for the Rams.
That's Fisher's call.
It's not Fisher's call. You got ownership there that wants him in that position, probably because it's a smooth transition from St. Louis to Los Angeles, and he kind of facilitated that. But here's what I want people to recognize. 3 things. Number one, Jeff Fisher's last playoff appearance as a coach, 2008, 8 years ago. His last playoff win as a coach, 2003, 13 years ago, was the last time he won a playoff game. And last but not least, I got to double check this stat because I'm not sure, but I think he's like 10 wins away from having the most losses as a head coach in NFL history. He's at 156 as we speak. Now, I don't mean to bring up Don King yet again, but only in America can this kind of stuff happen. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
What I'm saying is once they traded up in the draft, you could see this coming. You could see Fisher has to support this.
Listen, I think it benefits him. I just don't think it's his call. I mean, think about this. Bill O'Brien gets Brock Osweiler without having a conversation with him. I mean, I think sometimes we overstate the influence that head coaches have on personnel. That's why I think you have to evaluate them 2 different ways.
Good point.
Jeff Fisher has to coach the team. He's got to coach them to win.
He's 21 years.
He's 9 behind Dan Reeves for most losses ever as a head coach.
So in that sense,
NFL, what does it stand for? Not for long. You must be doing something right because he changed it up.
Sure.
There's a lot of people, other coaches, I'm sure, shaking their head when they saw this news come out. And speaking of not for long, Manziel knows 2016 is out for him, making an NFL roster, but he's getting ready for a 2017 comeback.